Hi, good evening. My name is Amy Rattenbury. I'm one of the acupuncturists at SVT Health and Wellness, and I want to thank you for joining me tonight. I'm sorry I can't be there in person. I had to head north for an appointment, but I hope to be with you this summer when we review the fire element. And if you have any questions, please jot them down. You can give them to Jennifer Dixon and she'll pass them on to me, and I'll answer them next week as soon as possible. So to get started, I have this 5-element quiz. Some of you who have attended the previous classes might recognize it. I've tried to revise it a little bit, but I'd like to ask that everyone go ahead and take a look at the quiz and spend some time. And basically, if you could just put a little check mark, or you can circle any of the boxes that you resonate with. And I'll just ask Jennifer to pause the presentation until everyone has time to fill this out. Thank you so much. So you have all filled out your quiz, and you might notice some patterns here. A couple of points that I would like to make is that you might notice that you have a little bit of something in every one of the 5 elements, and that is what we're looking for. In Chinese medicine theory, we say that everyone has all 5 elements in them, so you should show that you have some things of each element. The other thing that I'd like to mention is that some of the concepts or words that I wrote on this quiz were sort of neutral, or perhaps you would call them positive. And then some of them were maybe ones that you would think of as negative. And what I want to just point out here is that in Chinese medicine, we're constantly trying to help a person achieve balance or harmony. And for each person, that can look different. And sometimes you can have what's called an excess condition, where something is too strong, or you might have the opposite, which is a deficient condition where something is too weak. And so what I'll be talking about tonight, if see if it makes more sense, is that swing between when something presents as being like overly strong or excessive, or conversely, if it's deficient. Those are things that we can work on in Chinese medicine to try and bring greater balance and harmony to a person. So to get started, we'll just go over all the 5 elements, as I mentioned. So in Chinese medicine, we have wood, fire, earth, metal, and water. There's other ancient traditions like the Ayurvedic tradition in India, and the Tibetan medicine tradition. I think they're both more of a 4-element style. But in Chinese medicine, we use 5 elements. And basically, what happened was that there were practitioners that paid attention to what was happening out in nature, and they started to see patterns over time. And then they realized and recognized that those same patterns that they saw out in the external world could also be used to describe what was happening internally with people and their health and well-being. And so basically the Chinese adopted 5 elements, but other traditions might have 4 or a different number. So in Chinese medicine, we have wood, fire, earth, metal, and water. And wood encompasses all the growing living things that are coming up out of the ground. So it can be trees, shrubs, flowers, plants, grown food. All of these things are encompassed within the wood element. Fire element is fire, of course. And then the earth element is the soil that's alive, that provides the nourishment that the wood plants can grow out of. Wood element plants can grow out of. The metal element in Chinese medicine encompasses like minerals and rocks. And you can see in this picture, in this upper left-hand corner, the mountains are considered metal. And then also air. Although in Chinese medicine, we don't talk about air quite as much as they do in, for example, like Ayurvedic medicine. And then the last one on this list is water. Of course, that's water like rivers, oceans, can also be rain, snow, and so forth. Um, and so what the Chinese medicine practitioners are looking at is how these five elements are represented in a person. And again, how can we achieve optimal harmony and balance for each individual? Also knowing that everyone is different, every body is different, body type. The environment that we live in might be different. You know, for example, we're here in Homer, Alaska, is quite different than, say, like Phoenix, Arizona. So very much looking at the relationships between what's going on in the internal world and the external world. So to start, I'll just go through each of the elements briefly, and then, like I mentioned, we'll delve more deeply into the wood element. So to start, the wood element is associated with the spring season and the organ and energy systems of the gallbladder and the liver. And I put the times 11 p.m. to 1 a.m. for the gallbladder and 1 to 3 a.m. for the liver. And so, again, for those of you who have not attended my talks before, on the back side of the quiz, you'll see this 24-hour clock. It's kind of a fun theory that we have in Chinese medicine, where each organ energy system has its strong point, and it's a 2-hour cycle. And then if you look across the clock, that's when it's weakest. So for example, gallbladder is strongest from 11 p.m. to 1 a.m. and then weakest from 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. Or liver is strongest from 1 to 3 a.m. and then weakest from 1 p.m. to 3 p.m. And the one thing I just wrote at the bottom of this sheet to pay attention to is a lot of people have come to me over the years and will mention that they have trouble sleeping. And for example, if they notice that they're always waking up around 2 o'clock or 3 o'clock in the morning, I might look at this clock as a way to determine what might be going on, for example, in the liver, that is creating disharmony. Sorry about that. Just turn that off. And so, as I mentioned on the handout, for some people, if they're waking up at, for example, around 1 a.m. or 2 a.m. or 3 a.m., is it because the liver is having trouble detoxifying? Perhaps you've eaten a heavy fatty meal earlier in the day, and that is why you're wide awake. Or it could also be that, and I'll explain more as we go deeper into the wood element, but the liver energy has a strong resonance with like dreams and visions and planning for the future and goals. And it's also the time when people feel very creative. So sometimes people are awake during those hours because they feel very inspired and creative. And so those are some of the things that I would look at if someone was coming in and saying, oh yes, I have insomnia, I'm always awake, always wake up at 2 a.m. Then we'll look a little closer at that. The wood element has a physical resonance with the ligaments, the tendons, vision, and your eye health. The emotions and the psychological characteristics have to do with anger on one side, or meekness when it's deficient, or being impatient versus being flexible. So some of the life themes of the wood element have to do with growth, change, competitiveness, assertiveness, plans, dreams, implementation of those dreams and plans, action, flexibility, and decision making. So a balanced wood element allows a person to be assertive with appropriate boundaries, yet have flexibility in order to grow, develop, and thrive. And there can be extremes of emotion. So when it's deficient, it could be meek, like too passive, for example, without good, strong boundaries versus aggressive or anger, but kind of more to the point of rage. And we'll work on balancing that if that's coming up for someone. And I just want to mention, like, in general, the emotion that's tied to the wood element is anger. And some people automatically associate that as something negative. But the reality is each emotion has an appropriate, it's appropriate and necessary for human development and for the expression of the self. And what I mean by that is sometimes anger is justified. Like if you witness something that is unjust or upsetting, then you might feel anger. And anger is that energy that rises up and helps you do something about it. Basically, maybe you'll call someone out on an action or decide to get involved in some way. So anger can be appropriate, and it's actually very helpful for initiating change and growth and activity. But when it becomes unhealthy is where it could be repressed or suppressed down. If you don't think that it's okay to feel anger and you're constantly suppressing it, then sometimes it can manifest in the body as illnesses. So you could see things like headaches, migraines, dizziness, sometimes high blood pressure, muscle tension, spasms. Sometimes these are related to that liver energy being constrained and repressed instead of expressed appropriately. Okay. So moving on, the fire element is unique because it actually has 4 energy organ systems associated with it. All the rest of the elements have 2, but fire is associated with the summer season, the heart, the small intestine, the pericardium, and the triple warmer. And some people have not heard of the terms pericardium or triple warmer. So pericardium is the envelope or the wrapping around the heart that protects it. And the triple warmer in Chinese medicine is like this delineation of 3 levels in the body and the communication between those, basically the communication between those 3 units of the body. Sometimes it's likened to the lymphatic system or the endocrine system, but there's nothing quite exactly that matches it in Western medicine. The physical resonance of the fire element is with the circulatory system. So definitely the heart is kind of the big thing. And then also the tongue and speech. And the emotion and psychological characteristics have to do with warmth, connection, intimacy, joy. When it gets excessive, it could be manic, or if it's deficient, it could be depression, right? Lack of joy. And the life themes have to do with communication, relationships, love, warmth, appropriate humor. And so we'll talk about this more when I give the talk on the fire element, but for example, if someone has inappropriate humor, like sarcastic, like overly sarcastic or just inappropriate, then it might indicate an imbalance in one of the energy organ systems of the fire element. And so we would look a little bit closer at that. Also, some of the other life themes: connection versus inappropriate relationships, isolation. Again, I mentioned sarcasm. So these are some of the life themes of the fire element. And it has to do with allowing a person to give and receive love with appropriate degrees of emotional closeness. So some people might come in and they are perhaps like too open. In other words, they're letting everybody in very closely, and maybe they're getting hurt often. Then we would look at the fire element, treating the fire element. Or conversely, if they don't let anybody in, they're kind of isolated, they're unable to establish relationships or friendships, then we would look at the fire element as a way to treat that. And the extremes, again, as I mentioned, joy, mania on the one hand when it gets excessive, or lack of joy, depression, lack of connection when it's deficient. Okay. The earth element is related to the late summer, early autumn. So in Alaska, we don't have much of that sort of harvest time, late summer, early autumn period that a lot of the lower 48 has. But basically, it would sort of be around August, September, in some places, even into October in the lower 48. And it's associated with the stomach and the spleen energy and organ systems, and has to do with like the muscle tone or the quality of the muscles, that of course the digestive system and the mouth. So the emotions and the psychological characteristics have to do with generosity, feeling supported, centered, stable, versus worry, overthinking, and anxiety. So the emotion of the earth element is actually worry. And again, like it's important to, I mean, we think about things, right? We mull over things, and that's what helps us determine, how to act or what to do next, for example. But overthinking or over worrying, like ruminating, can be problematic, and that indicates perhaps an earth imbalance. And especially if it becomes sort of anxiety, like some people get to the point where they almost become trapped with the mind just kind of overthinking or ruminating too much about things, then we would look at treating the earth element. The life themes have to do with feeling abundant, nurtured, versus hoarding or being overbearing or needy, overly dependent, smothering, complaining. So these are some of the things that would come up with the earth element. So again, allowing a person to give and receive appropriate support and nurturing. And the extremes can be, for example, rejecting care from others, or being emotionally needy, cloying, again, that kind of like overly like complaining and needing so much attention, so much care, or worried all the time, can't shut the mind off, circular thoughts. So these are things that can pop up when the earth element is imbalanced. And again, the characteristics are feeling supported, getting nourished and nourishing others, being centered, stable, and having mental clarity. The metal element is related to the season, or is found in the season of autumn, and the lung and large intestine energy and organ systems. And has a physical resonance with the skin, the mucous membranes, the immune system, nose, and smell. And the emotion of the metal element is grief, and the psychological characteristic can be about inspiration. And so again, grief is an emotion that is necessary, being a human being. And when it gets out of balance, is a person either having a hard time letting go. For example, the grieving is just going on perhaps too long, or the person seems to be kind of trapped in a cycle of grief, and or can perhaps they can't feel it at all, like they're just not exhibiting any signs of grief. And so then we would look at treating the metal element. And so the life themes are about ability to let go, the pursuit of knowledge, self-worth recognition, discernment. And so there's this quality in the metal element of, I wrote aesthetics, it's like appearances. And when it gets maybe excessive or imbalanced, then it might be like an over emphasis on materialism or obsessive compulsiveness, like overly consumed with like the details of things. Or also in the metal element, sometimes you can see an imbalance when someone just kind of is cut off and very aloof, unable to connect. And so a balanced metal element allows a person to take in and feel the richness of life in order to feel satisfaction and to also experience loss, which is a natural part of life, right? Things are impermanent and we're all going to experience loss at some time, but the ability to let go and continue to move forward in life. And so when it is impaired, then you can have someone who is melancholic, filled with grief, or like I mentioned before, unable to feel grief at all, or kind of shut off from their emotions. And as you can see, and even in the last element, the fire element, I was talking about kind of similar things like with depression being lack of joy or deficient fire. So when we're looking at a person, all the different elements are in relation to each other. And so sometimes it's teasing out, is this more of a fire issue for this person? Or is this more of a metal issue for this person? And then the metal characteristics have to do with recognition, feeling complete and valuable, self-worth, finding meaning in life. So we often see like people who are drawn to religion or religious leadership perhaps might have a very strong metal element. And then the last element is the water element. It's associated with the winter season and the bladder and kidney energy and organs. Has a physical resonance with bones, brain, teeth, the nervous system, ears, and hearing. And the emotion and psychological characteristic is really about fear. And again, fear is appropriate. We have fear as part of our human experience so that we know when something is perhaps challenging our survival and we need to react or behave in a certain way. But when does it become so strong that we actually become paralyzed? Or sometimes I'll see people who have like no sense of fear, so they're kind of like a adrenaline junkie or a daredevil, and then we want to balance that as well, because that can be indicative of a water imbalance. So balanced water element allows a person to assess risks and know the appropriate degree of danger. And then, as I was mentioning before, the difference between being terrified or paralyzed or versus being, a daredevil, and trying to find that balance in there where fear is appropriate and necessary, but not causing a person to overreact in one direction or the other. And the water characteristics have to do with the need to feel safe, being trusting, and also having strong willpower and drive. So now I would like to go a little bit deeper into the wood element. And I chose these two pictures. I hope you can see them. The one on the right is actually a mushroom that's pushing through concrete. And I just thought that was astounding, and it just shows the power of that wood energy that can, like I wrote here, it's energetic, it's expansive, it's very, it's powerful, it's moving upward and outward. And last time I was talking about the water element where it's very contractive, right? During the winter season, we're coming inward, we're hibernating, all the energy is being stored and concentrated, dormant in a sense, waiting for the spring to come out. And so now we have the spring, the wood element arising, and it's quite amazing that out of this dormant hibernation time, all this energy starts to spring forward. So balanced wood person exhibits good focus, planning, decision-making, but also flexibility and adaptability. And so we want to see that, that the energy is used in a way that allows for clear direction, but also flexibility, because life is always basically can be unpredictable. And can we go with the flow of life? So a wood imbalance can sometimes manifest as poor judgment or disorganization, or someone who has lack of boundaries or the inability to make decisions. Or a person who's also imbalanced, but kind of on the excess side. They might have a hard time relaxing. They're prone to headaches, muscle tension, maybe repressed emotions, especially that when I was talking about that repressed anger, and they're trying to, micromanage everybody else and everything outside of themselves instead of just allowing what's naturally occurring to flow and to be flexible with that. So the virtue of the wood element is to teach us patience and flexibility. And so in Chinese medicine, they often use the example of the bamboo tree. And I don't know if any of you have had the experience of traveling in Asia. I spent, many years, like over 4 years in my younger 20s, living in Asia, and then had traveled there a couple of times because my family is from Japan. When I was traveling in Asia, one time I remember I did this raft trip, and they literally right in front of us cut down wild bamboo stalks that were just huge. They were probably at least this big around, and they just cut them at those segments, but they cut them, I mean, they were probably like, I don't know, 10, 15 feet long at least. And then they just lashed it together with some rope. And basically that was a raft that you stood on and you floated down a river. And the bamboo was just like incredibly strong, and it was also buoyant. And it was amazing. But then you would also look up at this bamboo forest, and the trees would just be like flexing and waving in the wind. And it was just really beautiful. So as I wrote here, bamboo can reach great heights and is very strong and stable, basically stable enough that you can river raft in them or on them. And yet they also can bend and flow with the wind. And so they don't snap or break, even when huge windstorms come through. You can just see them flexing. And so that's why in Chinese medicine, they really like to use the example of bamboo as a harmonious wood. So are you able to go with the flow of life, bending and flexing as needed? So that allows you to continue to grow and change without getting rigid or breaking or snapping in half. And then in the springtime, as I was mentioning, you're coming out of that dormancy or that hibernating period of the winter, and you feel this energy coming upward and outward. And it's a great time to cleanse, detoxify, or spring clean. And so, as I wrote here, it's a great time of year to clean out blockages, both internally in our bodies and externally in our lives. So inviting in that new growth and change of the season, and inviting new growth to happen for this whole next year. And all this cleansing is really important for the liver and the gallbladder, that have a lot to do with digestion and detoxification for the whole body. So some of the symptoms that can occur when the liver and gallbladder are congested or not functioning properly, and this is more in the Chinese medicine point of view, some of the syndromes can be headaches, migraines. I just found out that it's pronounced, I always call it tinnitus, but I guess it's supposed to be called tinnitus. Anyways, it's ear ringing. And sometimes the ear ringing can be from a liver excess disharmony, and sometimes it can actually be more from a kidney energy disharmony. So, again, your practitioner will be able to assess that. Dysmenorrhea, abnormal periods, can be related to more liver disharmony. Digestive disorders, including constipation, diarrhea, nausea, gas, bloating, abdominal or back pain, vision issues, muscle spasms, tension, cramping, gallstones, and poor digestion of fats are just some of the symptoms that can occur when the liver and the gallbladder energy is congested. So maximizing health and healing during the spring has a lot to do with cleansing. And so a lot of people like to do like detoxes or cleanses in the springtime. And in Chinese medicine, we definitely think that's a good idea. We don't recommend it in the winter, but the springtime is a good time. So I just want you to take a look at your handout here. So this one has two different sections. So I would just like you to spend a couple of minutes, and this is just for you. Can you write down 3 areas that you'd like to clean up or change in your life? So for example, for me, I would say I want to go through my clothes and donate all the clothes that I haven't worn in the past year. And I'd like to organize my desk. I just have sort of everything jammed into this desk at home, and I just really want to go through it and actually organize it better. And then Jennifer had a sugar detox class I think it was last week, and then maybe even also in January. And so I know she does it periodically, and she always has such great information about cleansing and detoxifying foods. So now is a great time to chat with her as well about that. So just take a few moments, and then I'll just have Jennifer pause for a minute so you have some time to write down some ideas of, it can be either internal, like what you would like for your own health, or external, what you want in your home environment or just around you in your life. How you would like to clean up or change something in your life. And you can write down a time frame if you want. I want to try and accomplish this within the next 2 months or within the next year. You can write that down too. And this is all just for you to think about. So just take a couple moments here. Okay, and then the second part of the exercise is long and short-term planning, vision, and decision-making are essential for manifesting creativity and change. So what are 3 dreams, plans, or visions for your life that you hold? So some people perhaps want to, try quilting. They want to quilt a blanket for their grandchild. Or for me, I've always wanted to travel to Greece, so I'd like to do that maybe sometime in the next 5 years. So anything, it can be anything. Just jot down 3 plans or visions that you would like to manifest in your life. And we'll just take a couple moments here. Okay, and then kind of jumping back into the food component, the cleansing and detoxifying that can happen in the spring. So, I mean, this is all just common sense. We kind of touched on similar themes even in the fall and the winter classes, but eating meals with low quality fats and oil, especially really heavy, fatty meals, too much meat, processed foods, they can really congest the liver and the gallbladder, and that can bog down detoxification. So, all those different health symptoms can arise from that: headache, sinus congestion, fatigue, all the abdominal pain, back pain, and then digestive disorders. So cleaning up the diet can be huge. And I can't even tell you how many times when I have a patient who actually, it's hard, right? It's hard to really make changes sometimes, but when they do and they come back and they tell me, oh my gosh, I cannot believe it, my back pain is totally gone, or my headaches are gone, I don't have sinus or allergies anymore, just from cleaning out my diet, just from quitting dairy, just from cutting out sugar. So there's a lot you can do, and there's a lot of support here at SVT Health and Wellness to help maximize your health and well-being, because it's not easy. And Jennifer's an excellent resource. She's probably maybe a little embarrassed I keep talking about her, but you know, she just is so wonderful with all the nutrition classes you can and nutritional consults that you can do with her one-on-one, and also offering different exercise classes throughout the week and support groups. So you might want to touch base with her. I'm sure she'll probably have some flyers out as well. And so then, sorry, that the second piece of the slide, just again, common sense, avoiding all the fun stuff, right? Those French fries and the Big Macs, and reducing alcohol, caffeine, sugar. In Chinese medicine, we don't like ice drink. We say that really, really cold drinks actually slow down digestion. So you should try and have your drinks be at least lukewarm, not super cold. Again, dairy products, wheat, artificial sweeteners, all these things are really hard on the body to digest. And so to help clean and cleanse the body and to help optimize the liver and the gallbladder function, just some ideas to think about. This is just a list. Basically, everything green is wonderful. So green veggies, pretty soon, depending on what elevation you're at, the nettles are going to start coming out. Those are great for detoxifying. Yeah, broccoli, cabbage, celery, green beans, zucchini, kale, lettuce. You can sprout a lot of things. So, and you can be doing that all winter too. Since sometimes it's hard to get really good, vibrant green vegetables in the wintertime here, sprouts are wonderful alternative. And then Jen does a lot of classes on fermented veggies, sauerkraut, all these things are great for the liver and the gallbladder. And then there's a whole bunch of fruits. I just listed a few. And then I think if you remember all the way back to the quiz, one of the flavor that's associated with the wood element is sour. And each of the flavors, so I, like on the quiz, I wrote, you know, crave sour. So a little bit of sour is actually healing for the liver and the gallbladder, but then too much can actually be depleting. And it's same for all of the elements. So like sugar for the earth element that goes to the spleen and stomach is actually healing in Chinese medicine. The problem is that we eat too much sugar and then it becomes depleting or unhealthy, right? And same with salt, all those different things. So everything in moderation, again, that idea of trying to reach optimal harmony or balance. And, you know, when you start swinging too much one way or too much the other way, helping a person come back to the middle is ideal. And so anyways, that was a little bit of a tangent, but sour is great, but too much can also be detrimental. Excuse me. I liked this what is it called? Infographic. I just thought it was really good information here. So I hope you guys can read it. So it's just talking about the specifics of these 10 different food items and why they're helpful for detoxification. All these things are helpful also for the liver and the gallbladder in this time of year. I need a little water, sorry. Excuse me. Okay. And then again, this is all common sense. So whole grains, as opposed to processed, is going to be great. Lots of fluids. And again, mentioning like you can put a little squeeze of lemon or a little apple cider vinegar in your water. Herbal teas. Juicing is really popular, especially in warmer temperatures. It's a little bit tricky here in Alaska just because produce is so expensive here. And I just want to caution people not to juice too much fruit. Maybe Jen has a better take on it than I do, but a lot of times when I hear people are just like juicing fruit a lot, that it can be very high in sugar. And so you just want to be careful about that. So juicing greens like celery is really popular. A lot of people are doing that right now. or cucumbers, things like that. I think it is quite healthy, but and mixing a little bit of fruit juice with that is okay, but just not overdoing it with fruit juice because it's just so high in sugar. Um, and then there are herbs that in Chinese medicine we usually use formulas. We don't use single herbs. So the herbs I have listed here are more in Western herbal medicine, and they're just basic things like milk thistle, dandelion, and burdock, artichoke are all really good for the liver and the gallbladder. In Chinese medicine, we have things like um, well, in Chinese it's chai hu, and now I'm forgetting the Latin. I'll have to look it up. But yeah, we have all these different formulas in Chinese medicine that are really helpful for the liver and the gallbladder and some of the disorders that I mentioned on the previous slide. So there's a lot that we can assist with, but even just basic changes to how you're eating, what you're eating, and even a little bit of supplementation with herbs can be helpful. And then, of course, exercise and movement, because the wood energy is much more energetic, and it needs its expression in exercise. So this time of year and through the summer, we encourage more movement, everything from gardening, hiking, biking, walking. HIIT is high intensity training. If it's appropriate for your body type, that can be great. Swimming. We also always like restorative practices for relaxing the mind. So meditation, tai chi, qigong, yoga. Journaling can be a great way to jot down those plans and dreams. So I meant to talk a little bit more, and I forgot to mention the liver in particular in Chinese medicine has to do with it's called the general sometimes, and it has to do with it's the official that helps with the long-term vision or plan for the whole lifetime or for the future, basically. And then the gallbladder is more like I don't know, like it would be the official that actually implements the details, determines like the steps needed in order to make that vision or plan come true, basically. And so journaling not only the dreams that you have, but then also paying attention to what are the steps then that are needed to actually make that dream happen or make that dream come true is important. Also, again, with that whole concept with detoxifying, decluttering, cleansing, what can you do to release old habits and patterns? So you could use things like acupuncture, counseling, EFT, which is tapping. Yeah, there's just so many different therapies out there that can be really helpful for that. And I think at the end, if there's enough time, Jennifer might introduce a very, very simple Qigong movement that you can do at home. Again, I'm sorry I can't be there in person to show you that. And I also wanted to mention all the different classes that are happening around Homer. So I just brought the Spark calendar for March, and we have a couple of handouts for you, but there's just so many classes and things you can do, even just walking. And if you're afraid to walk because of all the ice right now, there's walking times, sometimes even more than once a day at the Spark, and it's very reasonable. All the classes I think are only like $3 to $5. Some of them are free. There's free community yoga. It's just such a wonderful resource. So there's the Spark classes. There's some of like the community recreation. Of course, there's the Bay Club. There's Dharmic Spruce that has yoga classes. Just it used to be Many Rivers, just a couple doors down from the clinic here. And then Jennifer actually offers a lot of different things during the week, and hopefully she'll mention those as well. So I want to thank you so much for joining me tonight. Sorry I couldn't be there with you in person. But if you have any questions, please write them down and hand those to Jen, and she'll let me know, and I'll get back to you next week. And I'm going to try very hard and hope to see you this summer when we go over the fire element, and hope you have a wonderful, beautiful spring. Thank you so much.